The 1980s, an era defined by big hair, neon leg warmers, and a steady stream of movies that embodied a very particular flavor of zaniness, often with a heavy helping of mullets. For every Ghostbusters and Beverly Hills Cop, there were 10 comedies that slipped through the cracks of history, often forgotten by the masses, but cherished by those who knew the true beauty of VHS rental shops and Sunday afternoon cable television. These films are like the forgotten children of comedy, not quite as polished or as famous as their older siblings, but unique in their own way. So, let's dust off the old movie shelf and explore 10 forgotten comedies from the 1980s that may have slipped into obscurity, but were once the toast of the town, or at least the midnight movie circuit. The Stuff, 1985. Who doesn't love a good horror comedy about a deadly dessert? The Stuff is a satirical take on consumerism and mass marketing, wrapped in the form of a food product that turns out to be alive. Yeah, that's right, killer yogurt that eats people. It's essentially the Jaws of snack foods, except with more bizarre corporate conspiracy theories and less beachside terror. In a film that asks the eternal question, what if we made food that could consume us? This forgotten gem holds a place in the hearts of B-movie lovers who just want to know one thing. Where can they get some of that sweet, murderous dessert? Mannequin, 1987. Before Pretty Woman, there was Mannequin, a movie so absurd that even its premise sounds like a fever dream. Andrew McCarthy plays a department store window dresser who falls in love with a mannequin, Kim Cattrall, that comes to life. Yeah, it's a love story between a man and a piece of plastic. Not to be confused with a touching romantic drama, Mannequin is a whirlwind of wacky antics and fish-out-of-water situations as the store manager, James Spader, tries to figure out why his window displays keep turning into a romantic nightmare. Was it an artistic statement on consumerism, or just an excuse to create awkward scenes of a man talking to a mannequin in public? You decide. Raising Arizona, 1987. Okay, Raising Arizona isn't entirely forgotten, but it's definitely a film that's overshadowed by its more famous Coen brothers works. The film tells the story of H.I. McDonough, Nicolas Cage, an ex-con who, after kidnapping a baby, finds himself entangled in the wackiest and most chaotic series of events imaginable. From the over-the-top characters to the satirical portrayal of family values, Raising Arizona combines slapstick, absurdity, and dark humor in a way that few films can. The combination of Nick Cage's unhinged energy and Holly Hunter's cold practicality is just pure cinematic magic. But let's face it, the film's manic pace and surreal moments are what really cement it as an underrated gem that demands a second viewing. Spaceballs, 1987. Sure, Spaceballs was a hit when it was first released, but somehow, it's always seemed to fade from the general pop culture conversation in favor of other Mel Brooks classics. It's as if people just forgot about the genius that was Brooks' riff on Star Wars, which is a crime because Spaceballs is one of the most brilliantly absurd parodies of all time. From Darth Vader's oversized helmet to Yogurt the Wise, small, and absurdly powerful mentor, this movie had it all. It's a farce, a satire, and a love letter to the space opera genre, all wrapped up in ridiculous jokes that still hold up today. Spaceballs remains a cult classic for all the right reasons. It's just a shame not everyone knows that. Death Becomes Her, 1992. Wait, you say, this is from the 90s, not the 80s. Technically, yes, but you have to understand that Death Becomes Her feels like it could have easily been plucked out of the 1980s treasure chest of high-concept comedies. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, this dark comedy features Meryl Streep, Goldie Hawn, and Bruce Willis in a plot involving immortality, rivalry, and a questionable potion that turns women into ageless, unkillable beings. The entire premise seems like it came from an alternate dimension where the 80s never ended, filled with grotesque beauty treatments, a satirical take on vanity, and an over-the-top performance by the cast. If you haven't watched it yet, you're missing out on a cult classic that is still trying to figure out why it wasn't a bigger hit. The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, 1984. A movie so 1980s that its plot makes no sense even by 1980s standards. Buckaroo Banzai is about a rock star neurosurgeon who also happens to be a fighter pilot and adventurer who saves the world from an alien invasion. Oh, and he does it all while dressed like an 80s action hero. The film starred Peter Weller, who would later become RoboCop, as the titular character, and it was everything. A campy fever dream of explosions, random science fiction jargon, and bizarre one-liners. There's an inexplicable love story, evil aliens, and the kind of characters you're still trying to figure out. While it wasn't a hit at the box office, it certainly found its audience and remains a beloved cult classic today for its sheer lunacy. Amazon Women on the Moon, 1987. You know what's better than one obscure 1980s comedy? A whole bunch of them, tied together in an anthology. Amazon Women on the Moon is a collection of short comedic segments that are loosely connected by a fake movie called, well, Amazon Women on the Moon. It's a ridiculous parody of late-night TV, bad movies, and the absurdities of media culture. You get segments with a very early appearance by Arsenio Hall, a weirdly prescient take on virtual reality, and the concept of a movie theater with no actual movies. It's weird, unhinged, and just bizarre enough to be loved by those who stumbled upon it in their VHS rental spree. The Great Outdoors, 1988. Ah yes, John Candy and Dan Aykroyd in a summer vacation comedy. What could go wrong? Well, apparently not much, because The Great Outdoors is a delightful gem that's both funny and heartwarming. When two families from different worlds meet at a lakeside resort, things quickly spiral into hilarious chaos. From a bear attack to a series of unfortunate events involving food and nature, this film takes every trope in the book and turns it into slapstick gold. But somehow, The Great Outdoors isn't discussed as much as it should be, perhaps because it's too much fun without any pretensions. Sometimes a good comedy doesn't need to be groundbreaking, just genuinely enjoyable. The Last American Virgin, 1982. Oh, The Last American Virgin, the teen comedy that turns the genre on its head. Forget about the typical raunchy humor you'd expect from a film like this. Instead, The Last American Virgin delivers an unexpectedly emotional experience that gets very real about love, heartbreak, and awkward teenage experiences. It's less about the gags and more about the cringe-worthy moments of adolescence. The film centers around a group of high school friends, and while there's no shortage of 80s teen movie tropes, bad dates, crazy parties, the emotional payoff at the end hits harder than you expect from a film in this genre. It's as if John Hughes decided to make a movie without the happy ending. The shock value of this ending is still a talking point to this day. My Blue Heaven, 1990. And here's the one that will make you say, wait, I remember that. My Blue Heaven starred Steve Martin and Rick Moranis and is a fish-out-of-water comedy about a former mobster, Martin, trying to start a new life under witness protection. Martin's character is hilariously out of place in his new suburban life, and Moranis, as his overly neurotic FBI handler, brings the film's frantic humor to the next level. While it was overshadowed by other hits of the era, My Blue Heaven remains an underrated treat that captures Martin's charm and wit and proves that even mobsters can get caught in a suburban nightmare.